Hey guys, I'm Mihir Joshi, and welcome to another episode of the MJ Show. Now today I have somebody really interesting here with me. I've been falling in love with sneakers over the last few months. It's a relatively new thing for me, but I'm not new to being a collector. As you can see behind me, I have my comic book collection. I collect statues. I've always been into music and all sorts of really cool pop culture stuff. But I've been getting into sneakers over the last few months, and in the last couple of months, if there was one sneaker that was absolutely the sneaker that everybody wanted to get, it created an insane buzz on Air Max Day. It was the Bacons. But here's the thing: I'm going to be talking to somebody who's an artist, who's an entrepreneur, who's a storyteller, and just a really cool guy. And coincidentally, he's also the creator of those shoes that I just talked about. But let's find out a little bit more about the man. Let's welcome on the MJ show the fabulous Dave Ortiz. Dave, welcome to the show, man.
How are you? It's funny. You are in Delhi, right?
I'm in Mumbai.
Mumbai. Okay. Oh, Mumbai Proud. Okay,
Yeah,
because
man,
I
repping.
I just got a house in Delhi, and I
Ah,
was looking, and we're another Delhi in the United States, so it's kind of hilarious that. But
that is pretty
yeah,
cool.
man, I'm happy to be on your show.
So you know what? I know everybody in the world is tripping about the re-release of the Bacons, and for everybody watching right now, here's what I'm going to tell you: if you just go on YouTube and type Dave Ortiz and Bacon, you will find at least five videos, and five fantastic videos, mind you, where you can get the history of the shoe and how he made it, and a little bit more about the sneaker shop that he ran for about 7 years, 2002 to 2009. Is that about right?
2002, yeah, to 2009, yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yep.
history is out there. And if you just spend a minute to find out more about why this sneaker is hyped, you'll find out in those videos. Today, however, I want to find out a little bit more about the man, Dave Ortiz. So, Dave, let's start off with your journey. How did you get into all of these cool things that you're doing? Because it's not just one thing, it's not sneakers. Sneakers is just like a small part of your story. Where did the
Yeah.
Dave Ortiz story begin?
Well, it started in the 80s. Uh, you know, 1981.
Hmm.
Um, I was going to school. I was in probably the sixth grade or fifth grade.
Hmm.
And I came across a guy, and he was finishing a mural that he graffiti painted on a wall.
Hmm.
And it said, "Is the Wiz." Now, this guy is the Wiz. He wrote for this crew called TMB, the Mad Bombers,
Hmm.
and they used to write graffiti on the A and the C trains.
Hmm.
And I live near where they park the trains. It's called the layups.
Okay.
So when I saw this piece, I was fascinated by it. And I remember, and I asked him, I said, "Did you make this?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And he goes, "And you know what? You could make this too."
All
And I
right.
was like, whoa. And that was the spark that kind of ignited the flame in which I became an artist, and I just wanted to learn how to make art. And so for me, I would go down into the train tunnels with my friends, and we used to play tag. And I grew up in urban cities, so playing in the tunnels was like a kid going to a park playing on the swings. It's just a little bit more dangerous because a fucking a train can kill you, or
Yeah.
the or the workers can chase you out, or you can
Yeah.
get arrested, and there was all sorts of things. But so we would play in the tunnels, and that's where initially I learned how to do color theory.
All right.
I learned what colors worked with what other colors. And and a lot of graffiti writers like Quick and Is and some other guys, would write down there, and I would watch them and see how they would put things together.
Hmm.
And that was the sort of thing that I learned early in my youth. And I carry that on to this day.
You're still doing a lot of art right now. You're painting. You've got
I
drawings.
paint. I paint and I do a lot of silkscreen
The screen, yeah.
prints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back in the day, when you were making graffiti, or you were getting into street art at that point in time, that's was that the time when you kind of came up with the meat name? How did that come about? How did that become your moniker? And why, I mean?
Okay, it's a funny story. Okay, so in 1989,
Uh-huh.
no, let's say 1988, I
Uh,
used to go out to this nightclub in the city, and it
mhm,
was on 13th Street and West Side Highway.
mhm,
And my friend Eli Gessner, he worked there, and he gave me a job there.
mhm,
And so from 19, and this is in the meat packing district,
mhm,
where they actually, serviced meats, chopped them up, packaged them, and sold them to the different stores
mhm.
and whatnot. So I just kind of like being around meat. I just thought it would be funny to tag the word meat,
Uh-huh.
and then I was like, I said, you know what? I need a emblem or a iconic symbol or a logo,
Yeah.
and I was like, the way Nike, when you look at Nike,
Yeah.
and you see the check mark, you already automatically know that that's a Nike.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's my symbol for
Yeah.
meat that could symbolize the word, but just in a weird thing? And then I started to draw the chicken leg.
Yeah.
And the chicken leg, originally, I got the idea from the Flintstones.
Ah, okay.
So I drew that chicken leg, and that became my Nike check. So then the way I branded, I learned how to do branding was um, I would write the word, on one block, right?
Hmm.
On one side of the block, I write the word
Hmm.
meat, M backward EAT.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the block, I would write the word with the symbol
Okay.
together. So then
Right.
when you walk down the street, you start noticing that these two things belong to each other.
Right.
Then I would go one more block and I would just write the symbol. And then I'd go to the next block and just write the word.
Uh-huh.
So if the average person would walk down the street, you would recognize that there was these two things that meant the same.
Very
And it
cool.
was the way I learned how to do branding. And now we go to 1993.
Uh-huh.
Me and my friends, we started a skateboard company called Zoo York.
New York, yeah.
Now, Zoo York was at 425 West 13th Street. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here, mind you, I was working at the nightclub that was on 13th Street and West Side Highway,
Mm-hmm.
and Zoo York was on 13th Street and Washington, 1 block away. So I didn't go too far. So I was at that location, 425 West 13th Street, from 1993 to 2001 or
All right.
2002,
Okay.
just before I opened the store. So for that whole time in that whole neighborhood, I was surrounded by meat all the time. And at where our office was, there was an actual butcher place. And you could Google it and see the image. It's called Dave's Quality Veal.
Wheel. Yeah, yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
So, so every now and again that I would hang out and get drunk, I would tag the word meat over the word veal. And the
All
guy
right.
who owned the place, his name was Gary, wasn't Dave.
Uh-huh.
And Gary would come upstairs and be like, "Hey, asshole, you owe me $175. I got to fucking paint over the thing again." He's like, "Why don't you get a fucking life?" And I'd be like, "One day I'm going to open a store and it's going to be called Dave's Quality Meat." And voila, 2002, I bet my friend Eli again.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey," I said, "what if I opened a store?" And he was like, "All right, well, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "You got to make something different because you can't just open a store. Nobody gives a fuck." And I was like, "I know, I get that. But what if I opened a store and made it a concept store and designed the store to look like a butcher shop based on my graffiti tag? And I packaged everything like meat and we called it Dave's Quality Meat." I was like, "How corny is that name?" And he was like, "That's kind of corny." And I was like, "I bet you $1 I could take that corny name and turn it into something." And he was like, "I'll take that bet." And we bet $1, just like in the movie Trading Places when they ruined Dan Aykroyd's life.
Yeah.
Um, I bet $1 with Eli. And then I remember in 2005 or 4, Eli comes to the store with a magazine in his hand. It was a GQ magazine. And he goes, being the idiot that you are, and you never like to read anything, he goes, here's that dollar I owe you. And I open it up, and GQ magazine names my store the best store in America. Now,
That is
that was
cool.
really funny.
That is cool, man. This is why at the very top of this episode, I said this man is a storyteller. I read this, but just listening to it from him was brilliant. But hey, you know what? Speaking of Eli, did you not work? I mean, did you not sort of create Zuyok with him as well?
Well, it was Eli, Rodney Smith, and Adam Schatz. They were the founders, and then I
Mhm.
was the first employee.
Ah,
But
okay,
we all worked together, and
right.
we all kind of built this brand.
Hmm.
And we just used to do different hijinks. In the beginning, we didn't really have a lot of money, so
Yeah.
we kind of like duped people into buying the product before we made the product. So what we would do is we would make a collection and make one sample or
Yeah.
like two samples and
Yeah.
give some to the skaters, and
Huh.
then we do a trade show, and then we would sell the product, right? But never ship the product,
Get the
right? And then
money.
everybody who would be like, oh, we'd be like, yo, it's sold out so fast. But here's the deal: next season, we're going to do pre-orders. So if you prepay, you'll get your order. You're guaranteed to get it. So then people were paying. They financed the whole thing, and then we just kind of like made it up as we were going along.
That is
And
crazy.
and that's
Didn't
how
you even do the same with Dave's Quality Meats? I mean, didn't you
a little bit,
kind of something
a little
along those
bit.
lines? You'd gotten merchandise made and you got your skater friends to kind of wear it, and that's what I
Yeah,
read.
yeah, that's what we like. So before the store opened, I
Yeah,
was already giving the product, like I was making product and giving it to pro skaters.
that's
So then
brilliant.
now pro skaters are skating and taking photographs, and they're in Thrasher and in Slap Magazine and Big Brother wearing Dave's Quality Meat. And so people were like, what is this Dave's Quality Meat thing? And they were like, I have to have it because, Chad Muska has it, or, Harold Hunter has it, or, all these big skaters are wearing it. And they're like, I want to be cool like that. I want to have that shirt. So it was like, seeding product before the product is made
That's
to get
brilliant.
people excited to wear it later. So when the store opened, people were like, yes, I want to wear this crazy logo that I don't know what it's about, but yeah.
Well, for everybody watching, especially all of you young people who are getting into all sorts of cool things that you want to do business, and especially with in India, reselling is becoming a big deal. Sneaker reselling, I know it's huge in the US as well, but right now so many young people, like I literally in the last 5 days I've spoken to at least 10 kids between the age of 16 and 18 who are reselling sneakers, which is insane. But learn from Dave. There's just so many ways that you can make your business grow and become a lot cooler, than just doing the standard stuff, which normally everybody else would do. But you know what? So you did that for about 7 years, like I said, with the sneaker shop, and while everybody obviously knows about the bacons, and the story behind that, that was not the only sneaker, or that was not the only collaboration with a major brand that you did in those years, right? I
No,
mean, you did a
no,
lot of
no.
other
I
things as
did.
well.
I did a bunch of other shoes.
Yeah.
I did a dunk high. I did a bunch of dunk highs. I did a New Balance. I did Adidas. I did Converse. Um, Converse. The Converse shoe was one of my favorite shoes.
Hmm.
I was one of the first artists to do Project Red,
Oh wow.
and for me that was the most conceptual shoe and the most, I thought it was the coolest shoe to do in the first place, because initially, everybody, they had 10 artists, right? And then they did this big opening for this project, and everybody did a red shoe. It's called Project Red. And I did a shoe that was Superman blue, but had red highlights,
All right.
right? And on the sides of first of all, I took a Converse and I cut it into a Converse a mid, because I
Okay.
used to do that as a kid. I would cut my Converse down because I didn't like the way they looked, because they got all choked up at the top. So I cut
Yeah.
it to a mid, cut two eyelets down. Then I did blue leather, like Superman blue, and then red highlights. And then on the sides of the shoe, because the project was about AIDS, I thought about, and it was in Africa. So I was
Mhm.
like, what is the earliest form of language? Hieroglyphics. So then I researched all these hieroglyphics. And then I found this hieroglyphic of a snake body with a lion's head with
Mhm.
the sun as the crown,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
And that was called the Carnibius. Now, the
Okay.
Carnibius was the god of protection of illness and disease. And that was on the left side. Then on the back side was the symbol of blood. Then on the
Wow.
other side was the Ankh, which is life. So it was like protection of blood and life. And
That's
then on
nice.
the inside of the footbed was a repeat pattern that repeated that said the phrase, "What would you give up for a cure?" So every time you put this on, you would have to think about what would you give up for a
Oof.
cure. Then the sneaker lace on the toe clip, it said cure all. Then when you turn the shoe upside down, it was a clear bottom, but the inside of it, it looked like sliced meat. So again, and then my logo was on the tongue, but the tongue was still at the same length as if it was a high top. So it would fold over. So it wasn't about me. It was about this project. And it was so conceptual that people didn't get it. And I think like three people understood what I was doing. And to me, it's my favorite shoe.
That's
And I
awesome.
laugh about it because people are like, they don't know about it, and they're like, "What's your favorite shoe?" And I tell them, and then I tell them that same long story, and they go, and it's just too much information, and they can't handle it, and they're just like, "Talk to me about the bacon, so talk to me about a dunk," like because that's easy to digest. But when you get too conceptual, it gets a little too convoluted.
Here's what I'm going to do for all of you watching this episode. And I'm fascinated. I'll admit I have not seen that shoe. What I'm going to do is once we finish this chat that we are doing right now on Zoom, I'm going to check with Dave. I'm going to get some pictures of not just the Converse shoe that he spoke about, but the Adidas shoes, the New Balance ones, and the dunks that he's talking about. And when this episode goes up on my Instagram, I'm going to give you pictures in my story so you can see all the other shoes that he's worked on apart from the bacons as well. But
The Adidas
let's
shoe. Let me
yeah,
let me, let
yeah,
me
yeah, yeah,
say
go ahead, go
something
ahead, go
about
ahead.
the
Yeah,
Adidas
yeah,
shoe.
yeah, yeah.
The Adidas shoe is really funny because we did a thing called Atacolor,
Hmm.
and this shoe, if you look at the shoe, looks like a Jordan 11. And it
Okay.
was pretty funny because here I am doing an Adidas, but yet I make it look like a Jordan 11, and like I submit the artwork, and I'm like, okay, I wonder if they're gonna pick this up, and then they make the shoe, right, and then the kids realize what happened, and then they're on Night Talk. Back then there was only this blog called Night Talk,
Uh-huh.
and Night Talk, and the kids were like, oh my god, I can't believe Adidas let this happen. And then the people at Adidas was like, the fuck is wrong with you sending this, what are you, crazy? And I go, I didn't make the shoe. I said, I designed the shoe.
You did
You
it.
made a shoe. Somebody over there is sleeping at the wheel. So, I would do silly things like that to see if I could get away with things. And it's one
Was
of my,
that the first and last shoe that you did for Adidas?
no,
I was
I did
just
like three
joking. I was
more.
just joking. That's awesome. But so I see a pattern. You do something, and then once you spent enough time with it, you want to move on, you want to do something else, right? I mean, so you spent 7 years, you created a store which became like the number one store, according to GQ magazine in America. People were obviously coming, and the bacons became pretty big. I mean, I believe when you did like a re-release of the bacons about 3-4 years after they originally released, that's when the hype was even more, right? Like
Yeah,
how did you sort of, when you did that re-release, when you held on to some pairs and then you did the re-release, what did you do differently? Why was the hype so much more 3-4 years after you launched them initially?
because again, it was giving the product to the right people to wear it,
Mhm.
and that's what kind of turned it on. Because when it first came out, it was the palette was so different than what anybody was doing.
Mhm.
It was this softer palette that was because at the time, guys were doing Air Force Ones, and they would do them in like black, navy blue, army green, and white, obviously. And so for me to come out with this soft palette of pastel colors,
Yeah.
it was not something that I'm a big tough dude, like I run, I wear. So it kind of like flipped the game on its head,
Yeah.
and people, it took a little bit of time for people to like kind of embrace it,
Yeah.
because it's not something that you normally would see,
Yeah.
like a dude wearing,
Yeah.
like a dude's wearing pink. Cameron never, he wasn't invented yet. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You know what I mean? So for people to kind of embrace that, it was a little like tough. And then they finally started getting it. And then it kind of built. But again, it was like I was making something that was so far ahead of its time that it took a few years for it to catch up. And then
Mhm.
once they were gone, then people like started
Hey, where?
blogging about it and talking
Yeah.
about it.
And where can I get
And
that?
then it,
Yeah.
yeah, where can I get that? Oh shit! And then you'd see a pair would pop up on like Flight Club, and they'd be like a few $1,000s, and then it got to the point. The highest I've ever seen it was like $6,000.
Good Lord. That's crazy.
That's what I say. I was like, you know what? I made that shoe and I wouldn't even buy it for $6,000. I'd buy a used car.
That's
At
true.
least you could go somewhere.
That is true. What do you think about the re-release right now? Were you happy that they sort of retroed the shoe in 2021 right now?
Of course, because it's like, A, you're talking to me, you know. B, it teaches the next generation of kids that there were people like that built the foundation that all of this shit is built on.
Yeah.
And myself and people like Stash and like Espo and there's a lot of guys that made these shoes that are like oops, that kind of built it, and the kids don't know this,
Hmm.
this history. So
Yeah.
it's like you're teaching, you're giving history lessons to the younger generation
Yeah.
on why is it that they like this genre
Yeah.
of stuff,
Yeah.
because out of nowhere, you just there's a new generation of kids that just are into shoes, but they don't know why they're into shoes.
That's true. And I keep saying this, like I told at the very start of this episode, I'm a relatively new sneaker collector. I just turned 40 about 15 days ago, and all of a sudden this
Happy
switch.
birthday.
Thank you, man. Is a switch went off in my head, and at the start of 2021 is when I began collecting sneakers. I've got about 9 really cool pairs now. I love the yellow color, and I always say, I want to only pick up the stuff that I'm actually going to wear. I really, really want to pick up stuff that I want to wear. And I have to tell you, man, the day your sneaker came out, before that, and I love researching everything. Like, I love reading up about stuff. I love the history of the sneakers. I love how things were made and all of that. So, before the launch was going to happen, I read up and I was like, man, I got to get myself one of these pairs. But as it happens, did not get it on the Nike website. And there are only 2 stores in India which actually are proper retailers of all these really good shoes. There's a store called Super Kicks, and there's another one called Wedge Non Wedge, and I couldn't get it at either of those stores as well. So all of you resellers out there who are following me on Instagram and sending me messages about what do I want to pick up, get me a pair of Air Max Bacons, please. I would love to have them. I would have loved to have them in my hand right now while I'm talking to the creator of the shoe. But I don't have a pair of Air Max Bacons, and I'm not going to pay $6,000 or the equivalent of that in
No,
India.
don't do that.
I'm not doing that. So yeah. Hook me up with some bacons, guys, because I really love the shoe. And I gotta tell you, man, I reached out to you because I really love the shoes. I thought they were really, really cool. And then as I spent more time discovering all the other things that you're doing, I thought, holy shit, that's even cooler. So speaking of which, once the sneaker thing got done, you decided to get into a new venture. What was that? Was the alcohol thing,
I
vodka thing right after that?
No, before I did the out do to the present day, before that I started a bike
Oh yeah,
brand.
a cycle brand. Yeah, right. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was called Another Whip. And basically what we did was we went down to Asia, to China, and we found a company that would make these, because I've always rode bikes and
Hmm.
BMX and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I knew that the messenger culture was starting to bubble.
Yeah.
And this is pre, Quicksilver and Kevin Bacon,
Hmm.
and so I was just like watching that market, and I was like, if I can make a single speed bike for, you know, $300,
Yeah.
that people could come in, because customization started to happen.
Yeah.
People were doing Nike ID, and I was like, well, how can I do something in a way where people could customize it and make them feel like they're making their own bike? So
Yeah.
we just got these really easy price point bikes, single speed, and people would come in and you pick the frame color and the wheels and the handlebars and the seat and the brakes, and 25 minutes, 30 minutes later, you got a bike, and it was $300.
That's crazy.
And for New York, that's a really inexpensive price for a bicycle. But the
Yeah.
best thing about those bikes was that it was inexpensive, and that when it did get stolen, because they all get stolen, you could buy another one. And if you rode the bike for one summer, you
Hmm.
got your money's worth.
Lovely. Hey, and
Yeah.
you still ride your bike, right? I mean, I see.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
I'm I'm
is
a
that the
I'm
most
a very
convenient way to travel in New
It
York?
is the most it is the most convenient way to ride. I mean, I have probably 12 different bikes, and I even have a city bike membership, and
Hmm.
I love riding bikes. It's the one thing, like, I don't go to the gym. I'm not that guy. I'm not Joe fucking push-ups. Um, but I do like to ride a bike, and it's the only thing that keeps me kind of slim, slim-ish. I could use a sit-up, but do I want to do a sit-up? No.
Man, and after this, you did the absolute vodka thing. Our New York, is that what it was
Our New
called?
York,
Our
yes.
New
So
York,
I
yeah.
partnered up with some people that worked at Absolute Vodka,
Hmm.
and they started this brand, and they wanted to do this brand in New York City, but they knew that they couldn't do it
Yeah.
because you can't come out with a brand called Our New York and have a bunch of Swedish people that are behind it. I mean,
Right.
that are the face of it.
Correct.
And so they reached out to me, and they were like, and I was like, well, I'm not really interested in working for anybody.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, 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 buddy, we want to have you as a partner. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
I'm listening. And so we had to find a space, and because there wasn't any distilleries in Manhattan,
Yeah.
they always opened up in the kind of factory areas of New York, like in Brooklyn or Long
Uh-huh.
Island City, in Queens. And we wanted to do this in Manhattan because A, nobody has done it.
Hmm.
B, it's where things used to be made. And there is a certain sort of, respect to when you got an item or a garment or a thing that was made in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And, people like, there was a whole big boom revolution of people moving to Williamsburg, Brooklyn,
Hmm.
which is right over the bridge. It's not too far from Manhattan.
Hmm.
And everybody was doing things there. And I was just like, hell no, fuck that. I was like, first of all, I lived in that neighborhood when it sucked in the 90s, and now it's all hip. I was like, I don't want to go there. And I wanted to make it in Manhattan. And
Nice.
we found a location. And then after we found the location, it took us 4.5 years of working with the FDNY and the Department of Buildings, the DOB, and a lot of architects and a lot of lawyers and a lot of, you know, checks that went out to people, and we pulled this thing off. But for me, here I am. I did one of the first concept stores in New York,
Hmm.
right? And then now I did the first distillery in Manhattan. You Not too many people could say that they've done the first.
That is true.
And for me to have two on my belt, my resume, that's kind of nice. And I love it. It's something that's really cool because it's a product that I could stand behind. It's made, in Manhattan, and
Hmm.
it's made with New York ingredients, and we kind of like we just we are true to the city. You know, a lot of these other places, they're great and all, but for me, I think we're doing it in a way that we are trying to include everybody who's in New York,
That is cool.
not just one specific, type of people that would buy alcohol.
Hmm.
I personally want to make it for the high fashion people. I want to make it for the business people. I also want to make it for the guy who's coming from Jackson Heights, Queens on the 7 train. Like regular folks. Like it's all inclusive. And I think that a lot of brands kind of paint themselves into corners.
Hmm.
And I was like, New York is about everybody. It's about all the people that come to this city to try to make it and do make it. And some people don't make it, and that's fine and good. But if you didn't try, and fail, then that's where I think when trying and failing, there's a
Hmm.
success in that, because that's the learning. It's the learning in the failure.
Yeah.
And you have to do things in order to figure out what not to do.
I see a lot of parallels between New York. I mean, I know for a lot of us watching right now, for especially for most of my friends here watching the show, you may not recognize the names of the places that he's speaking about in New York. But if you live in Mumbai, or if you live in Delhi, or any of the cities here, there is a parallel, and I think even more so with Mumbai, there is that same kind of buzz, that energy that is there in the city, which, from everything that I'm hearing about New York and I've seen in films and movies and stories and everything, I find that there's a lot of commonality between New York and Mumbai. And I'd love to come and check out the place someday, see all these amazing places that you're talking about, which we generally get to see only in the movies. But speaking of New York City, things have not been super comfortable in the last one crazy year that the whole universe has lived through, right? How are you doing? Are you all right? Has everything been all right with you and your family?
Yeah, everything is, and thank you for asking. Yes, everything has been great. Me and I was lucky because I have the business that I have. I make alcohol,
Yeah,
and that makes us an essential business.
yeah,
Because if there wasn't any alcohol, people would go batshit crazy. So we were allowed to work and
yeah,
manufacture, and
right,
then we were able to sell to the liquor stores, and distribute the vodka.
right,
Um, so for me, it was in terms of work. I worked for the whole year.
yeah,
Um, and other things, working from home,
yeah,
I got to develop new hobbies. People, everybody got pandemic hobbies.
yeah.
Some people were knitting. I learned how to bake bread,
Oh,
and I
that's the
did.
that's the reason I see so many sourdough bread pictures on your
Yes,
Instagram.
yes.
Pretty cool.
I am. Go ahead.
Speaking of Instagram, I'm gonna give a plug for his Instagram. It's gonna come up on the screen right now. Follow him on Instagram, man. There's some really really cool stuff on his Instagram. I wanted to ask you. I'm a musician. I love music. I saw you recommended the Bee Gees documentary. I'm gonna be watching it over the weekend right now because I
Oh,
saw
it's
it on your
so
Instagram.
good.
Yeah, and my wife is a huge Bee Gees fan. Like growing up, the one album that was played like a lot in her house was Saturday Night Fever, and like
Oh, that everybody played that. But there's
exactly,
so much more music.
there's so much
Like
more music to the Bee Gees.
you have no idea, like stuff from the 50s when
Yeah,
they were like kind of like the young version of the Beatles. It's just mind blowing. And
yeah,
then you find out how much music that they wrote for people.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I had no idea. I had
yeah.
no idea. They're just phenomenal band. Yeah, I love music. I mean, I see that you love music. I'm a huge blues fan,
All right.
and I'm a huge Star Wars fan as well. Let me
See
ask you a
that?
question.
Yeah, go for it.
When when was it that when did you first see Star Wars? What year?
So I must have been. So obviously, I didn't get to see it in the theaters. I was too young at that point of time when the movies came out. I think the first time I discovered Star Wars was after my 10th grade. My family and I went to Singapore for a vacation for the very first time, and I got the VCDs. Back then, it wasn't even DVDs, so I got a
Yeah,
VCD
yeah.
box set of the first three movies, and this was just before the Prelude trilogy came out, as in the prequel trilogies came out. And I did not, I mean, I saw those movies in the theaters, as in episode 1, 2, and 3, but
Yeah,
four,
yeah.
5, and 6 I landed up seeing because of that VCD box set that I picked up in Singapore. And I'd heard so much about it. Like, I loved science fiction, but I'd heard so much about Star Wars, and I had to know what it was. So the moment we walked into a store which had movies, I told my dad, man, if I don't buy anything else on this trip, I need to get that 3 CD box set. Since then, I got the DVDs, I've got the Blu-rays, I've got statues. As you can see, I got a whole bunch of
Yeah,
Star Wars
yeah.
statues around me. And I've just gotten so much in. I mean, I'm in love with pop culture in general. I have a Superman tattoo right here, and
Oh, nice.
I've got a Kryptonian alphabet which says M and N for my wife's name, that is Neha, and for me. So I'm like a major ass a nerd geek, and I've loved. I'm lucky to say that all the things that I've loved and that I've been passionate about, I've been able to convert them into work as well. So now when I work, I don't feel like I'm working. I feel like shit, I'm having fun.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of doing something you love,
Yeah.
because that's when it's not work.
That's
And
when it's
if you
not work.
love it, you're do it at whatever time. Like right now it's 10 p.m.,
Yeah.
Mumbai time.
Correct.
And
Correct.
and so for you, you're just like, yeah, dude, I'm jazz. I'm going to talk to another nerd who's into things like me, and that's cool.
That's
And
cool.
oh, how about this? Have you watched The Mandalorian?
Ooh, I
Let's
love
go.
it
Let's
so
talk about
much.
it.
My good lord, man. Everything about that show was brilliant. Like, oh my god, it was from the characters to the visuals to just everything about that show. I can't wait to see where they take it next. Because of the Mandalorian, I actually started watching the animated Star Wars shows as
Yeah.
well because I thought, hey, there are a lot of references here which come from Rebels, and there are some references here that come from Clone Wars.
Hmm.
So let me start watching all of that. Man, it's such an amazing universe to be immersed in. Hey, something from Dave and from me. If you guys aren't into Star Wars yet, what the hell are you doing? Get into Star
Yeah.
Wars already. And another music recommendation from Dave and from me, check out that Bee Gees documentary. If I find a link, if it's there on one of our Indian streaming sites, I'm going to give you the link in the description, or at least I'm going to give you the name. Figure your shit out, get a torrent, whatever you need to do, but watch it because it's going to be amazing. I've got it down already. I'm going to be watching it, like I said, over the weekend. Speaking of Dave, I woke up today at 3:30 in the morning because I'm working on US time 3 days a week. I was calling WrestleMania live in the morning for
That's the
Indian
other thing.
audiences.
I want to talk to you about WrestleMania. Like you do WWE. That's pretty fucking cool, man.
Yeah,
You
man.
know, I had one of my bartenders was such a WrestleManiac fan. And we had this really like high class like cocktail lounge, and he would play wrestling. Look at that. Look at
I got a flex, man. See, if you had your
Still
bacons around,
flex.
yeah, if you had your bacons around you and you held it in your hand, that's your flex. This is mine. I'm probably one of 5 people in the country who have a real 1:1 replica WWE title belt, and I got to say, I was gifted this by WWE because of all the work that I've done with them over the last 7 years. Man, this is something I've loved it for over 20 years. I've been a fan of WWE for about 25 years, ever since they started showing it in India. And now to say that I get to call the action live, and there is an entire generation of kids who are going to listen to WWE with my voice, it just blows my mind, man.
That's amazing. It's so cool when you get to do things, something that like you loved as a kid all your
Yeah,
life, and
yeah,
then all of a sudden you're engulfed in it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's just like it's so like surreal because you're just like, oh my God, here I am. I'm actually working with these people
absolutely.
opposed to just thinking about them in this abstract kind of way that like you're just a fan,
Yeah,
and you could be a fan, but now you're working with it and you're creating content,
yeah.
and you're extending it and keeping it going for the decades to come.
Yeah.
There's going to be some kid watching this show and being like, I like sneakers and I like wrestling. And we turn them on and keep it, and we just keep the legacy going. It's pretty
Do
cool.
you know, I just put up a picture today on Instagram where I said Kofi Kingston was wearing, I wore, just because I thought it would be something cool, and I know a lot of the WWE guys wear Jordans. I wore the band mids, the Air Jordan 1 band mids to my commentary session today, and Kofi Kingston was wearing the same one. So I took a picture of his, and I took a picture of me with my shoes, and I like did like a little grid, and I put it up and said, hey, look who's twinning with Kofi Kingston. So that was a lot of fun, man. It's just so good to be able to connect these stories. My love for wrestling now with my love for sneakers, my love for pop culture with my work that I'm doing. It's just been a lot of fun, man. And I can see that you have that same love and same joy for life, and you're always constantly doing really cool things. Speaking of which, speaking of all the cool things that he does, I'm going to give you a link to his website in the description below here. If you're watching it on IGTV or if you're watching it on YouTube, there's going to be a link. Please click on it. You can see the incredible art. I'm talking about paintings and silk screen Correct me if I got that
silk
wrong. What,
screens,
silk screens.
silk screens,
Silk screens that Dave has done
and
on
then
his
and then
website,
some of my photography.
and some of your
Uh,
photography. Beautiful stuff. It's all on his website. Please check it out. Follow him on Instagram. Show him some love. There's a lot more to the man than his bacons. And you'll find that out if you just spend some time looking him up and seeing all the cool things that he does. But listen, man, before we wrap up for today, what's next for Dave Ortiz? Do you ever see yourself making another sneaker in the future at some point in time?
I mean, I mentioned to Nike about maybe doing, if at all possible, maybe some sort of ACG collaboration.
Nice.
But for me right now, it's like, I'm up in my farmhouse and we're fixing it up, and I want to build my studio, and I want to get back into painting again
Hmm.
and making large scale paintings, because I used to make big paintings, and I have all these paintings in my head
Hmm.
that I kind of sketch out, and like the techniques of what I'm going to do. It's just a matter of putting the color to canvas.
Right.
So for me, it's just to get back into the paint world and do some big art shows, and maybe get a show at a really prominent gallery again, because I used to do that a lot, and I've done shows around the world and stuff like that. And you know back to art, like
That's
back to the
awesome.
basics, like where I came from. I started out as a kid who
Yeah.
saw a graffiti writer who said, I can do this. And, I did all these things in between,
Yeah.
but ultimately for me, it's like about painting. The store, for
Yeah.
me, when I built the store, that was an art installation that
Yeah.
made money.
Correct.
And then I'm always creating art, whether it's in design concepts, like when I did the Timbuktu collection,
Yeah.
where I designed this whole collection of bags to look like a brown paper bag.
Oh wow. Okay.
So like, that conversation was it was a bug out, because I was like, okay, because they make these high tech bags,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, we're gonna make this bag, but it's gonna be the most basic bag in the world. And they were like, what do you mean the most basic bag? They're like, we do technology. And I go, I know, and that's what's so cool. Here's what I want to do. And they were like, what? And I said, a brown paper bag. And they were like, are you out of your fucking mind? And I was like, yeah, I am, but here's how we're going to do this. And I
That's
made these
crazy.
bags, and it turned out to be pretty cool. Like I did a tote bag that was like a brown bag that you would get at a shopping store, at like a supermarket, and then
Uh-huh.
it transforms into a backpack.
Oh
And then
wow.
I did a sandwich bag that
Uh-huh.
you roll up,
Yeah.
and then it transforms into a hip pack, or you could put it on the handlebars of your bike.
That
Then
is
I
good.
made like a 12-ounce beer, like, a bag that you would put a beer in and you
Yeah.
walk around in the street, but you
Yeah.
could connect it to your backpack, and you could hold your phone, and it's waterproof. And it's so all these like concepts, like taking the simplest bag but transform, like being a transformer. Like that was my whole thing. I was like, yeah, transformers, more than meets the eye. And I did this thing, and but that's how I think. I'm like, well,
That's
what,
crazy.
take something super basic and then make it something that you totally don't think it's supposed to be.
Man, I for sure know that this is just the start of our many conversations that we're going to have. Please, let's stay in touch. There's so much more that I want to find out about you. And the next time you're here in India, whether it's in Delhi or Mumbai, let's catch up in person and not just do this Zoom thing that we're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
right
I
now.
mean, I could talk all day. I mean, we could go hours into the Mandalorian whole culture of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Now, Boba Fett was in only he comes out in episode 5,
5. Yeah.
Empire,
Yeah.
and he's only on screen. Think about this: he's on screen for 8 minutes,
Yeah.
and he only says 27 words.
Wow.
Think about this whole fucking thing now. Everybody's like Boba Fett, Boba Fett. Like how he intrigued the world, because he barely said anything. He
Correct.
stood off to the side, but he was the coolest motherfucker out there. And now they have these spin-off shows, from the Mandalorian
That's going to
to
be about the Boba Fett.
Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Boba Fett story. And
Yeah.
for a character that was only on for fucking 8 minutes, that's wild. That like
That is crazy.
how the Star Wars universe kind of like how people are just so into it. It's so wild. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I could talk all day about Star Wars and whatnot.
And trust me when I say this, putting Star Wars here behind me today was not planned. I did not know he's a Star Wars fan. This is just an amazing coincidence.
No,
I have
I
a
was just looking at it. And I see you're like your Han Solo and Leia and Luke and R2 and Chewbacca and. So I was just like, oh my god! And then you have
I'm gonna
Batman.
send you. I'm gonna send you some more pictures of my collection. I'm surprised I've not already done that. But listen, as you can see, Dave and I have got a whole bunch of things to talk about. But I know we gotta wrap up this episode right now. I gotta tell all of you, please follow the man on Instagram, subscribe to the MJ Show on YouTube, and follow me on Instagram as well. Because I'm gonna be bringing a lot more amazing sneaker stories to all of you, and not just about the sneakers, but stories around it and the history
That's what
behind it.
I really like that you did this interview like that, because a lot of people, they're like, talk about the sneaker, and I'm like, there's like 30 videos out there. You could just they're there,
Exactly.
and there's more to people than just their sneakers.
Exactly.
And a sneaker design is something that's, I'm honored and humbled by it that I was able to do something like that. But there's so much more to design that
Correct.
than just a sneaker, because how did you get there? What did what was your inspiration before that?
Yep.
And those are the right questions, and you asked every right question, and I really appreciated this interview. This was really cool, so thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for being here with me. It was genuinely such a pleasure getting to know you today. And like I told all of you, this is just the start. I hope to get him back again the next time he's done something that needs to be talked about, and that could probably be the next week. But we'll definitely stay in touch with Dave. But for today, this is pretty much all the time we have for now. That is the awesome Dave Ortiz. My name is Mihir Joshi. This was the MJ Show. I'll see you guys soon. Hey, I'm Mihir Joshi and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you get a notification every time a new video goes up. Hit the like button as well. Leave a comment here for my guests and for me, and share it with absolutely everybody. We would really appreciate it. Make it happen.